Ladies and gentlemen, it's currently May 7th, 2023, and about a week ago, the chess world crowned a new world champion by the name of Ding Liren. Now, normally that's the end of the story. You win a one-on-one match, you do some press, and then you move on with your chess career onto other tournaments that you could potentially win. But that's not quite the case with Ding Liren. You see, what many of you may not know is that the journey that Ding Liren took to the throne was maybe the greatest comeback story in any sport. There are three distinct parts to the Ding Liren story, and in today's video, I will be taking you through this arc. It was something straight out of a movie, and I made some videos about his journey as the journey was ongoing. Little did I know that Ding would ultimately triumph as the world champion of chess. All right? This video will have three parts. It'll be something like 20-25 minutes long. Let me take you through what arguably is the greatest comeback story in sports. We begin in 2020, the pandemic. Ding Liren lives in China. There are severe difficulties traveling in and out. Every country has a different set of protocol in terms of quarantine. And even though Ding is a top 5, even top 2 player in the world, he's unable to play many tournaments at all. In fact, he almost plays no chess 2020, 2021. Yes, he plays online. Everybody plays online, right? But he doesn't play any live events. This is important because on March 21st, 2022, this happens. And this was the beginning of the Ding Liren story. FIDE Ethics Committee issues a 6-month ban on Sergei Karyakin, mostly for pro-war tweets. Now, I'm not going to get into what you think of the decision. I'm not going to get into all that. But Sergei Karyakin, around this time, was very active on social media in support of Russian operations that were going on in Ukraine. And he suffered a 6-month ban for this, which removed him for competition in the Candidates Tournament. What is the Candidates Tournament? In chess, the Candidates is an 8-player double round robin. Everybody plays each other twice, 14 rounds. And the person that emerges out of that tournament will play for the World Championship. So Karyakin loses his spot. So who is it going to go to? Well, it's obviously going to go to the second highest rated player in the world, who is eligible. Ding Liren was not eligible. This is part 1 of the Ding Liren saga. He was ineligible to play because he had not played enough games. So what did he do? Ding Liren played about 30 rated games in about 20 days in China, which is allowed. It's allowed, but he has to get the organization. He has to get other players to play against. And that's where this absolutely unreal story begins. He has to play 30 games of chess in 20 days. He hasn't played in a while. He's got to play other players. And one of his early games, I mean, it was topsy-turvy. He played a young player also from China named Li Di, and I covered a lot of these games. Ding was playing different Englishes and openings, and one of his early games against Li Di was a very, very tense affair, where Li Di actually had probably a better position early on and was doing a great job. Ding Liren had to take massive risk in this game, opening up his king, BC, Ding takes the knight, Li Di plays D5, hammering away at the center of the position. You know how much you gotta wager in 30 games against people 200 points lower than you? This is hardly easy. Ding plays knight G3, takes, and I mean, look at the complexity of this position. Ding Liren is losing. He is losing in his qualifier games, all right? Li Di has found himself in a dominant position against a man who back then had no spot in the candidates. He needed to win enough games and even just play enough games to be eligible, all right? And Ding was suffering. Li Di built up a monstrous position against him. And this wasn't the only game where Ding had various difficulties, right? Look at this. Bishop takes b1. He's lost a rook in the corner of the board, but he's fighting back. Bishop to b3, hitting the pawn on f7. Captures a rook sacrifice from Li Di. And when everything was said and done, we got a rooks and knights endgame, and Li Di was in great shape. Passed pawn, he's going to win this. He's got the pawns coming down the board. Obviously, both sides in a bit of a time trouble, but then Ding started coming back, brought his knights forward, pawn takes, and Li Di trying to promote both sets of pawns. And in an absolute, like, catastrophic race to the conclusion, knight c8 was the dagger. Knight c8 is a move that facilitates the passing of the b pawn, but also knight e7 check and rook f8 mate on the back rank. And if not for that idea, I mean, black is getting in here with the rooks and the pawns. So yeah, Li Di must have been very, very concerned with back rank mating ideas. He did have to be brave and run, but he ends up succumbing to the pressure of Ding. And well, Ding played his 30 games. Ding managed to play his 30 games. He was in trouble in some of those games, but Ding qualified to the candidates tournament. Now, let's keep something in mind. The candidates tournament was in Spain. It was in Madrid. So Ding had to travel from China to Spain. He was only able to do that. There were select flights back in the day in and out of places like China. I mean, you couldn't just get on a flight. Like, they had to charter a plane. Maybe there was just one trip every week. So Ding made it to Madrid. That time difference is massive. It's like a 6-hour, 6-7 hour time difference. Not as big as New York and China, but it's a time difference. And he sits down to play game one of the candidates. And keep in mind, he's got to win the candidates to make it to the World Championship, right? He's got to win the candidates to make it to the World Championship to play Magnus Carlsen, who at the time is the world champion. So, first game of the candidates, Ding Liren sits down. He's playing Jan Nepomniachtchi, okay? I know it's a deja vu, all right? Ding plays a very sharp English. Jan has black. Jan is coming off of a world championship already, right? Queen e5. And Ding plays this kind of unique, weird idea to push on the queen side, and then plays h4. And from the early opening, it was Jan who established a very strong center. And Jan brought his knight back. Ding played knight c4. And Jan made it very clear that he has very bad intentions for Ding's king. And Ding did not react accurately. He played a bit too slowly. He let Jan get a very strong bind on the center of the board. And a few moves later, Jan went g5. And ladies and gentlemen, game one of the candidates tournament. I know this is the World Championship match. I know. Ding played his 30 games. Ding made it. He made it to Madrid. But knight takes b7, and this was the start of Ding's tournament. All right, Ding, rook e4, not only lost round one, he lost round one by basically getting mated with bishop h3 check. And if you take this bishop, queen h1, king g4, h5, king g5, and it's just a set of unstoppable mates all around the king. Ding Liren in game one of the candidates tournament got crushed. He got crushed. He got crushed with white against the guy who just played for the World Championship. Jan had just played Magnus Carlsen. So Ding barely is even able to make it to the candidates. And everyone was like, oh, he barely qualified. And he loses. He loses it was not close. It was not close. Jet lag, maybe illness, right? Maybe he got sick. Maybe it was jet lag. Maybe it was just a lack of form because he hadn't played in top events for 2 years. This is how he starts the candidates. Getting completely crushed. 2806 was his rating. Gets crushed. And he was up and down throughout this tournament. He was up and down. He managed to put it together. And then we fast forward to the final game. Last game of the candidates. Now, this game is important. This game is important because the big cloud hanging over the candidates tournament was whether or not Magnus Carlsen would play the World Championship match. It was not clear. There is a number one player, and the coveted number one spot is if you win the candidates, and Jan Nepomniachtchi was winning the candidates. So, Ding Liren was not going to play for a world title. Jan was winning the tournament. Jan wins the candidates. Jan gets a rematch against Magnus. Magnus had said he was maybe not interested in playing for the world title unless Firouzja, who's a young player, originally from Iran, now in France, kind of like the young talent of the next generation. Magnus said, I probably won't play unless Firouzja wins, and maybe Hikaru, right? So this is the final round of the candidates tournament. It's for second place. Essentially, if Hikaru draws or wins, he gets second place in the candidates. If Ding wins and only wins, he can't draw, he gets second place in the candidates, and maybe he will play for the World Championship. Does that make sense? Magnus, winner of candidates. But if Magnus leaves, you need two people to play, right? So first and second. Magnus on one side, winner over here, or if no Magnus, first and second place. So this is the game. And Ding is playing white, and Hikaru plays an opening that he's never played over the board. And by the time the opening was finished, Hikaru had completely, and I mean really completely and totally, neutralized Ding Liren. The queens were traded, and it's a dead symmetrical position. There is nothing here. Hikaru plays a perfect opening, probably one that Ding was not expecting. This is an unwinnable position. They have the exact same pawns. They have the exact same pieces. There are no queens on the board. And that's it. Ding's window of opportunity is simply running out. And Hikaru is going to centralize his pieces. And he's going to trade the knights and the bishops. That's it. I mean, one by one, he is going to trade off the pieces, right? And Ding's got nothing. I mean, he's trying his best. He's trying to hold Hikaru. E5, very accurate move by Hikaru. Bishop goes back to D8. Knight F6, trading pieces. One by one, the pieces fall off. I mean, Ding has 3 pieces left. You get king and 6 versus king and 6. You ain't winning this game. Rook D1, Hikaru goes back to F6, Bishop D6, Hikaru plays Knight G4. That's it. Ding's window is gone. I mean, it's over. Hikaru is going to get second place in the candidates tournament, and that's it. Ding is fighting. All right, not only that, now Hikaru is even better. Hikaru's got a potential to be better here. But he makes one slight inaccuracy, all right? He plays a slight inaccuracy, and he tries to bring his bishop back to reroute it. But then Rook B7, and something was misevaluated by Hikaru, and Ding is suddenly alive. And his pieces are coming alive, and all of a sudden, he's removing Hikaru's defenses, and he's gonna start mobilizing his pawn majority with F3, and his rook is gonna go hunt some pawns, and wait a minute, is Ding Liren actually alive? Yes, Ding Liren is alive and well. His reports of his candidate's exit are greatly exaggerated, and Rook A2 is trapping the bishop. The pawn is an advantageous member of this endgame. And when all hope was lost, Ding Liren stunned everybody and took down Hikaru in the final round of the candidates. But keep in mind, getting second place at the candidates means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. The winner of the candidates plays for the world title. The guy who got second just got second place in an 8-player double round robin. Unless Magnus Carlsen doesn't defend his throne. Ding Liren was not even supposed to be in the candidates. Ding Liren was not supposed to be in the candidates. When he had a window to make it to the candidates, he wasn't eligible. He managed to organize tournaments locally to get the requirement to go play. He made it to the candidates. He got demolished in game 1. It was one of the worst games that he had played in years. But he bounced back. He stabilized the ship. And he won the last game of the tournament. That's not an exaggeration. That was the final game of the entire tournament. That game ended. There were no more games. He won the game to get second. But second doesn't matter. Because first place is the one that plays for the title. Unless Magnus Carlsen doesn't defend his throne. And now, Ding Liren is a contender for the World Championship against Jan Nepomniachtchi. He was never supposed to make the candidates. He wasn't even supposed to qualify to get second place because of the game that he was playing. He managed to power through and overcome and beat Hikaru in a 60-move endgame. He wins that game. He's still not supposed to play. And then he gets a shot. And the match against Jan Nepomniachtchi, I'm not going to re-summarize the match in this video. But we know how the match went. If you don't know how the match went, it was a best of 14 games. And Ding never led. Ding never had the lead. He trailed 1-0. He trailed 2-1. He trailed 3-2. Ding Liren trailed in every single stage of this match. The one time he could have broken through, nerves got to him. He froze up at the board. He ended up not being able to win that game. Folks, Ding Liren was on the verge of defeat. At some point in this match, there was a 95% certainty that it was over. This was one of the penultimate games. This was game 12. Ding Liren is already down a game. Okay? It's game 12, so 11 game. It's 6-5. All right? And I've already covered this game on my channel. But folks, by the 20th move of this game, Ding Liren had taken massive risks. And this was the position. Ding Liren was done. He would have lost this game and been down 2 games with 2 games to go. He would have been down 7-5. In a 14-game match, he would have had to win the games to even tie the score. And this was the position, and Ding played c4 and queen c3, and Jan stabilized the position, and that's it. Jan was moments away from becoming the next world champion. Ding tried to complicate matters, and it paid off. Jan could have played knight to f5 at some moments here. You can't take because of the various sacrifices. So bishop b8. And both sides were missing opportunities. Queen b4 was played by Ding. Queen d8 by Jan. And then the catastrophic error heard around the world. Pawn to f5. And Ding, who fought and fought and was on the verge of pure defeat. I mean, he did what he could. He sacrificed a pawn to try to open up the lines to the king. Jan played b5. And maybe here, Jan could have, instead of playing b4, he could have played a6. He could have not allowed any of this stuff. But Jan could have just gone for this. Queen c6, knight e1, queen here, rook g8. The queen would have come back. And Jan, in the ensuing position, would have just been comfortably better. Queen h4, f5, and so on. But the blunder heard around the world. Pawn to f5. Ding captured on e6. And his nerves outlasted Jan's as he marched his d-pawn into the position. Bishop d5. The diagonal to the king. The diagonal to the corner. The opening of the rook in some positions. And Ding was on the verge of being down 2 games with 2 games to go, and he tied the match. And it was 7-7. He didn't lead in any portion of the slow games. It came down to the final game of the rapid tiebreaks. And this game was a whole bunch of nothing. It was a Spanish opening that they had played about 15 moves of already. This was the final game. This was game 18. The score of the match was 8.5, 8.5. 7-7 in classical slow games and 3 draws. So 7 plus 1.5, 8.5, 8.5. They have played 17 games. Nothing to choose between them. All right? And this game was very similar to one that we had seen earlier that in the tie breaks, but there was nothing. And Jan, in fact, did an excellent job of waving a red flag in front of the bull and made Ding sacrifice a pawn. Jan was playing fantastic chess, stabilizing and getting into an endgame that looked like this. In fact, Jan Nepomniachtchi is a pawn up and 6 minutes! 6 minutes and a pawn. If Jan Nepomniachtchi manages to stabilize the position and win this game, he wins the world championship. Rook to d2 was the preferred move. Disconnecting the queen and the bishop here to get queen d5, king h8, and some sort of little queen infiltration, various ideas like this. But instead of that, he went back, and the game quickly became a draw. And both sides, look at the time. 2.5 minutes is all Ding has. He has 2.5 minutes versus 6. We have queen d7. And now, perhaps the most gangster move of Ding Liren's entire career. As in this position, when the players started repeating moves, Ding Liren, with 1 minute and 46 seconds on the clock, played the move rook to g6. In fact, when he played it, Ding had 1 minute and 20 seconds. With 80 seconds remaining, In the final tiebreak game of the World Championship, Ding declines a draw. Everything has culminated to this. The 30-game circuit that he had to go through in China. The devastating loss of round 1 in the candidates. The final glory of winning the final game of the candidates. The back and forth battle against Yan. Everything has led him here. And in the ensuing struggle, with just minutes on the clock combined, 50 seconds, Ding stabilized his king, traded into an endgame, and pushed his pawns. Both of them made it inches away from promoting as he monitored the safety of his king, and Ding Liren, against all odds, defeated Yan Nepomniachtchi in a 68-move battle in Game 18 of the World Chess Championship. The first time he led in the match, he won. He did not lead for 3 weeks. Imagine playing the same guy in chess for almost a month and you never lead. And the one game that he decided to lead this match, it ended. He won the match. He almost didn't play in the tournament to determine who makes it to the World Championship. He lost in that tournament when he made it. He then got COVID while in Spain, I'm pretty sure. I saw reports of this. He then beat Hikaru to get second. There was no guarantee of a match. He then made it to the match because Magnus stepped away. He didn't lead in the whole match. And when he finally led, it was over. How do you not appreciate this man? How do you not appreciate the journey that it takes to get to the zenith of the 64 squares? This is the insane story of Ding Liren. Greatest comeback story in chess? Good Lord. Wow. I guess I gotta say it. Get out of here.